Welcome to Setting the Table, hosted by Robin B., where we bring you the insider's scoop from top restaurateurs, industry experts, and creative minds who know what it takes to stand out and succeed. Hungry for insights on how to fuel your growth and stay ahead of the curve? You've just found your secret ingredient.
Today's guests are Neil Chan and Mike Wiedower of FoodServiceIQ. These guys help thousands of restaurants, independent and small chain, to cut food costs by 5 to 7% annually. And they do this without changing distributors or changing SKUs or whatnot. What I think makes this really unique, this business, is the fact that they do this on a performance basis. So if a restaurant doesn't get lower costs, they pay nothing. They're only paid when they actually save money for the restaurateur. So, okay. And with that, Mike and Neil, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming to Setting the Table. We appreciate you guys coming in.
Thank you for having us. We're excited.
So I wanted to get an understanding of where the idea for FoodServiceIQ came from.
Well, I can start off with that question. So I know looking at Mike and I, we're probably a strange partnership team to be looking at from the outside. My background is more in technology, and Mike, spent about 25 years or so of his career in the distribution world, eventually working his way up to become a COO of Cisco and president of PFG. Together, we brought a pretty interesting skill set to create, I think, something very unique in the market.
One of the things I thought was quite interesting and really unique to you guys was the fact that your clients don't pay you unless they get their costs reduced, right? Unless you produce results. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Something we've always implemented since day one is that we are 100% performance based. So our clients don't owe us anything unless we save them money. So our fee is a percentage of the spend, but that only applies if we typically save them a minimum percentage on their cost of goods.
If we don't perform, we wouldn't ask for any compensation. But history repeats itself. Our success to date shows that we do perform and people are happy to pay us for our services rendered.
FoodServiceIQ, you work with a lot of independent restaurants and regional groups rather than like the big chains, right? Why did you focus on this segment and what are the unique challenges?
Our sweet spot really is to help those, I would say between 5 restaurants and 40 restaurants. Why those? Because I think we provide them the best return on their investment in terms of their scale, our knowledge, our awareness. What's different about us in terms of other people out there, we assist them in 3 components. We assist them in the manufacturing relationships. A lot of the small independents don't even realize their buying power and their ability to negotiate directly on behalf of themselves with manufacturers. We obviously negotiate directly with distributors. They both play a very important role in terms of the overall profitability of either the broadliner or the manufacturer. And obviously, we're trying to even the scales, so to speak, to the large nationals. And the last thing I would say, the knowledge base that independents and small chains bring to the table, they just have a lot of upside in partnering with a company like ourselves at FoodServiceIQ because we bring a lot of knowledge to him to help them have more knowledge base to make good decisions on that ultimately affect their profitability and their success.
Clearly, you guys are bringing a wealth of experience and knowledge that maybe some independent or smaller chains they just don't have, maybe because of lack of resources or whatnot. When it comes to like the big mistakes that these operators are making on food costs and purchasing power, what are those things that you're seeing? And are there any things that are even making it harder at this point in time?
I think the first thing really is lack of knowledge about the industry and how the supply chain works and where the money is made, right? So there's a lot of back end tactics and hidden margin in this industry. And if you're not even aware that that's going on and you're not aware of what to do about it, that's where a lot of independent restaurant groups run into trouble. So I would say it's not necessarily a mistake. It's more of a lack of awareness because and then if you are aware, right, it's more, what do you really do about it? Because these are big companies, right? The distributors, the food manufacturers, et cetera. Hard to know what levers are even available to you to pull as an independent restaurant group in order to get a better deal, pricing, et cetera.
It does feel like there's a viewpoint, right? You're coming from their point of view. Maybe they just don't see the depth of opportunity there that you guys have that experience and knowledge about.
Yeah, just touching base once again on the knowledge side of the industry. The reality is, most of our type of customers don't have a lot of knowledge. They have the tendency of then listening too strongly to what the distributor tells them. The problem with that concept, when you don't have knowledge, is you're actually listening to a potential distributor partner who basically has one interest, and that's their bottom line profit. So I often use the analogy in this industry: be careful what you fall in love with, because a lot of restaurateurs will fall in love with products they simply can't afford, or they can't afford to put them on the menu, or the menu price point is such a high cost of goods that it's not in their best interest to even want to sell the product. Other things I could suggest that's kind of problematic is, number one, pain points of restaurateurs is they're not following and keeping track of their traffic. Again, you can increase your top line sales by simply increasing your menu pricings and blame it on cost of goods. But at some point, you're going to cost out, you're going to lose a customer or two because no longer can they afford your restaurant. So again, it's a misnomer to focus too long and hard on top line sales. Traffic is everything in this industry. You can always adapt and change your menu to continue to get that influx, that input of new customer traffic in there. But again, it's something you need to pay attention to, that a lot of smaller chains or restaurant groups really don't pay enough attention to it.
I totally agree. I actually just was talking to someone about POS on a different podcast, and we were talking about using the data and restaurateurs really looking at it and understanding their business. That's a big piece of it. Well, one thing that stood out to me was that with y'all's service, they don't have to switch suppliers, they don't have to change their menus necessarily. How does that actually work? Like, how does that work behind the scenes?
Well, we really work. We're not tied to anybody, right? We're somewhat unique in the industry in the sense that we don't receive kickbacks from anybody, except we're only paid by our clients, and so we're not incentivized to make anybody switch suppliers or products. And if we're not incentivized to do that, then in order to best take care of our clients, right, we want to make sure that they can stay with the vendors and the supplier, the vendors and the ingredients that they want to keep, that they've vetted over the years that they've had in business. And so for us, it's really just about working with their existing strategy, and the vendors and ingredients that they buy, and getting the best deal possible for wherever the market's at that time.
Makes sense. And it really puts you in the position where you're looking after their best interest, period.
They know what's best for their menu, right, and the quality that they want to output. And so it's on us to provide suggestions. But at the end of the day, we have to work within their constraints as far as how they view their business. Now, if we view something that's a little bit more educational that we feel like they're missing out on, we'll always make them aware of that. But it is the restaurant owner's choice at the end of the day. It's their business. And we're supposed to be good partners and good stewards of that.
At the end of the day, it's very important that our customer base understands we're not in business to improve our own wallet. We're in business to provide and help them leverage their cost of goods. That's amount of money. That's spend. That's not whether they buy a Nestle product, a Simplot product, or Lamb Western product. We're not in business to tell them what to do. We're in business through our knowledge to help them improve their cost of goods they're leveraging and put them on a playing field that's more akin to what the national folks are benefiting from, their skill set and their investment in their payroll in terms of human resource to help them purchase. And we're wrapping all that up to give them the skill set and help them with the skill set that they're just not aware of. I'll give you one last piece. The beef market is at all historic high time. Whether you're going to the retail grocery store, you're buying steak in the restaurants, it's huge. And there's a lot of false information out there suggesting that's going to improve in the near future. It's not going to improve. In the reality, restaurants make decisions on what they hear. And so one of our many things, and kind of goes up to probably towards the end of this conversation, is you can't spend enough time getting educated on your own about the industry, where markets are trending, because people are making decisions based upon those thoughts and what they're hearing in the marketplace.
Yeah, that's true. And there is so much volatility, particularly lately, it feels like, or the last few years. I think a lot of people are unsure what's the real is. So you're leveraging over $1 billion in food spend, correct?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
What is sort of the process, and what is the time frame they can expect to experience the results?
We know restaurant owners are busy, and the last thing that they want to do is gather a bunch of data for us to look at. And so we've made it straightforward in the sense that there's a very simple onboarding form and kickoff call that they jump on when they sign up with us, and we basically kind of handhold restaurant owners through what we need. It's usually just some contact information for their existing vendors, and from there, our team will take on the rest in terms of gathering data, doing analysis, having our procurement team analyze it, create a strategy, and I would say the typical time frame is somewhere between 2 to 4 months from officially signing on board to us actually delivering savings, just depending on what they're purchasing and who they're purchasing from and how complex the strategy is, et cetera.
That's amazing. That's fast.
One of our core values is customer obsession. I think that's really our main core value. And so everything we do from top down is built around how do we execute on our client work as quickly, efficiently, and accurately as possible.
Yeah, I like client obsession. That's an interesting way to put it. So I like that. Um, so do you have a story maybe that you can share of a restaurant that you've worked with that has benefited obviously from your services? I'm sure there's many, but I would love to just be able to share a story.
Well, there's a lot. In the great state of Texas, where our headquarters is in Austin, we have three clients there. One is Black's Barbecue, one is the Oasis, one is Just Society. All three different concepts, and all three restaurant groups all benefited from our services. And they benefit, I'll give you a range, just not to be too specific, from anywhere from 5 to 9% in actual cost of goods improvement over time. These clients have
Wow.
been with us for a significant period of time. And we've been most fortunate with some really high-end, high-class customers that benefit from the services that we've provided.
Absolutely. Well, and I love the Oasis. I used to go there when I was a UT grad, and I used to go there back then. So that restaurant has been around a little while. So for those owners and operators maybe not prepared to take on a service like y'all at this point, do you have any other simpler steps that they can take into account and kind of do on their own to at least start this process of getting their food costs under control?
I think one of the most practical things a restaurateur can do today in this crazy cost of goods environment is to know their menu like the back of their hand. It often amuses me in a weird way how few owners really know their menu, know what sells, what doesn't sell. Quite frankly, what's good on the menu and what's not good on their menu. Just because a chef or kitchen manager says something, it's got to be on the menu and they say it's good, that doesn't mean your guests think it's good. My practical advice is to know that menu like the back of your hand. Look at it on an ongoing monthly basis from a count of what's selling, what's not selling. Make buy side decisions on what the menu threshold pricing it can afford. And then again, kind of touching back on quality, just something as simple as a hamburger. It amazes me in our industry after 40 years how many lousy hamburgers are made in the industry. And again, it's not necessarily that the beef is bad. It's not that necessarily they didn't cook it right. It's the bun's cold, or they tried to save a nickel a bun by buying a lousy quality bun. And there is no good hamburger if it doesn't start with a good bun. A lot of our buns in our industry today come in frozen, and the bun itself often is still barely room temperature at most when they put a hot hamburger on there with cheese that they're hoping melts going out to the table. So know that menu, make decisions on the menu, and also, when possible, use ingredients in multiple applications so you're not spending your inventory dollars tied up on a shelf that doesn't move. The other last thing around the realm of this conversation is there's an old adage in this industry that you put dollars in the bank, not percentages in the bank. And a simple way of putting that, do you want to sell a filet mignon at $39.95 and make $15 or at a 45% food cost, or you want to sell a hamburger and put $5 in the bank account at a 20% food cost. So again, percentages and dollars are totally different in our industry. And I think restaurateurs need to spend attention to that as well. I would rather sell the filet mignon at $39.95, not the $49.95, but the $39.95, and put $15 in the bank account.
Those ingredients that sit on the shelf, you also then have a lot of waste. Yes. So then that's just one more expense that, restaurants are having to deal with, right?
Don't listen to those people that are making a living on your lack of knowledge. Dig in, learn the industry, understand the industry. That will help you learn a lot about cost of goods. And that's so important. And again, that's practical advice. But if they just do those two things, they'll go a long way to improving their operations. at least from an awareness standpoint and a customer satisfaction.
Thank you. All right. So I wanted to also just touch on some 2025 challenges and kind of adapting to just rising costs, labor costs, supply chain headaches. They're all still in the mix. How does Food Service IQ evolve to keep restaurants ahead of the game in the upcoming years? Like, what is your thoughts going into the future on how you're going to help them continue to succeed?
I think the customer obsession value is probably the most important for us as we go into an environment that continues to have rising costs. Because we hear from our clients all the time that food costs are not the only thing that's rising, right? As we all know, I was just talking to a client the other day who was saying, there's labor and rents and maintenance, and he was looking to do a remodel, and the construction costs were twice as much as he expected them to be, right? So even though we don't touch the categories that are outside of food spend, um, we have partners who do. And so we often refer our clients out to those partners when we hear that they're struggling with one of these areas. And as far as our services go, staying prepared and kind of on top of where the market has moved, I think it's really just about making sure that our team have a laser focus on what our core value proposition is. We don't want to stray away from that, because the minute we do, it's going to become messy, and our service is not going to perform as well as it does now, right? So I think for us, it's just about focus and sticking to what we're good at and making sure that the team is entirely aligned around this value of customer obsession.
I've had clients say, I can't do anything about my labor costs. I can't do anything about my rent costs. My insurance costs have gone up. I can't do anything anywhere. And they really default to only one area they feel like they can help in, or somebody can help them in. That's in cost of goods. And the reality is, I often say you can't save yourself in prosperity. You're not going to succeed, and your restaurant's going to keep its doors open for the next 10 years on the backs of the cost of goods, because in time, that cost of goods savings is going to run out. And the only way you can keep chasing cost of goods is by reducing quality of product that you're bringing in. And that's certainty. That's a great way to make sure you die a slow, miserable death. And so even though we don't touch some of these other services, I think it's incumbent upon them to be aware of all their expenses and to try to find ways, even if it's cutting a few hours a week out of the hostess or the sous chef in the back of the kitchen. I think they've got to work as hard in all their avenues of spend or their costs as they want to do in cost of goods. Cost of goods are typically between 28 to 32% of a 90% of a dollar's expense. And so you got to find other areas to leverage your insurance cost. Everything needs to be looked at on an ongoing, continuous basis to overall get the impact of a full strategy of looking at all costs.
Yeah, I agree. And I think more now than ever, restaurateurs have the capabilities to leverage technology more. And the more they can do that and cut out some of those costs by leveraging technology better, to me, like that is a place to really lean in on. I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts beyond, you were talking beyond your sort of focus point, any other ideas on tools or services that you think they should be leaning in on to succeed in the upcoming future that clearly costs are not going to start dropping and these issues aren't going to just disappear.
Well, you mentioned technology. There's a lot of technology solutions out there, obviously some better than others. Um, and they fit all sorts of niches, and some have tried to go broader and fit into multiple niches. And so I think it's just about what fits in with their existing operation, right? Technology is only as good as the user. And if you've got a fancy software platform, but you don't know how to use it effectively, you're going to be spending money on another category and not getting the full value out of it. And maybe it's detrimental because now you're spending more time debugging the thing and trying to figure out how to make it work for you because you're now spending money on it. Um,
Yeah.
we we're fans of perfect the manual processes first and then automate, not automate for automation's sake. And so when it comes to technology, you really need to understand, I think, your workflows, no matter what industry you're in, but it applies also to the restaurant industry. You need to understand what your workflows are and what the manual process is and perfect it before you go in and implement any kind of technology. And there's plenty of great technology out there. We've partnered with a handful of those companies. Schedulefly comes to mind. They're a great partner of ours, and they're focused exclusively on restaurant scheduling software. And we know that it's made many, many thousands of restaurant owners' lives easier as far as scheduling and managing employees. Um, but at the end of the day, you need to know how to use these tools and which ones. And so I can't be prescriptive about which ones in particular to use because it depends on your operation. And you need to evaluate what your workflows are before you implement any kind of technology.
The only thing, again, I would keep emphasizing is education. Learn, listen, don't assume. Don't keep going back to the same sources that tell you the same lousy story. Um, just this week, we bought 80,000 pounds of brisket for 2 clients, 80,000 pounds of brisket at about $20,000 below the market. And we made 2 customers very, very happy this week on their behalf. And that's ultimately what they pay us to do. And again, why did we help them get that? Number one, it's our job. Number two is our knowledge base and our relationships and our touches are so vast that we're always looking out for opportunity. And the stronger that a client or prospective client is in their own wisdom, the better we can help them. If we're taking from the ground floor up somebody that really doesn't want to learn, is very skeptic about knowledge and how that knowledge can help them succeed at a greater level, then we probably can help them. But if they're pretty strong based with knowledge and they just want to surround themselves with professionals who've done this for their whole life, at the end of the day, we typically have a good relationship in those scenarios.
Well, thank you both so much for coming on the podcast. You guys are a wealth of knowledge. Clearly, you have a fantastic company. If any of the listeners would like to reach you or work with you, can you provide any kind of information to how to do so?
I think the easiest way is via our website, foodserviceiq.com. We have our phone number and a form that you can contact us and get easily in touch with somebody on our team.
Thank you again. I think this was a fantastic podcast episode, and I think the listeners will learn a lot from what you had to say. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and please tune in next time.